Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask everyone to mute themselves now, if you have not done that already. And I understand if you don't want to turn your camera on, but we're also thrilled if you do to share with us. I'm Edie Hapner, and I am going to start our meeting off today and welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Alabama chapter of the Voice Foundation. And I'm sharing my screen so you can see all of our social media handles that we hope you will follow us on, and also our Gmail address if you ever need or want to get in touch. So, what is the Alabama Voice Foundation? Just going to take a couple of minutes to give you a brief history. We are the state chapter of the international organization called the Voice Foundation. And the Voice Foundation is the oldest group dedicated to the understanding of voice through, and this is the important part, interdisciplinary research and education. So the mission of the Voice Foundation is to enhance knowledge, care, and training of the voice through educational programs, to publish materials for voice care professionals, and that is the Journal of Voice, if you're familiar with that, the public and professional voice users, and to support and fund voice research. The Voice Foundation was actually established in 1969 by the Honorable Dr. Wilbur Gould, who was a giant in the field of otolaryngology. So, what is our mission as the Alabama chapter of the Voice Foundation? Well, our mission is to build a broader community of voice practitioners, voice educators, professional and occupational voice users in our state of Alabama in order to create an opportunity for networking, collaboration, and education. We want to build our Alabama voice community. Why are we affiliated with the Voice Foundation? Well, there's a couple of reasons that are actually important. One, an affiliation with the Voice Foundation means that the national chapter supports our state chapter by giving us a portion of each member's dues to support our chapter. So we are not asking people to be members of the national chapter of the Voice Foundation, but if you do become a member or an affiliated member, a portion of your yearly dues comes back to our chapter to support our meetings. Right now, our meetings are small and we don't have big costs, but we are hoping that at some point in 2021 that we may be able to get together, and those kind of meetings would have some costs associated. In terms of speech pathologists and the otolaryngologists who may be on this call, or PAs, NPs, anyone who needs continuing education units, the Voice Foundation also offers an opportunity for getting continuing education units, which is important to all of us, and we'll be pursuing that for future meetings. We don't have any for this meeting. So what's our plan? Our plan is to engage everyone in the state of Alabama who has the love and passion for the voice. So who is that? Singing teachers, speech language pathologists, physicians, music educators, acting teachers, actors, singers, and students of voice. We're planning to meet quarterly, and at every meeting we'll provide an educational opportunity. Today we are lucky enough to have Jenny Muckala from the Vanderbilt Voice Center speaking to us, and we'll introduce Jenny in just a few minutes. We'll provide a forum for networking between voice professionals. Now, we're not doing it at this meeting. It will definitely happen in in-person meetings, but we'll also talk about maybe interspersing some networking opportunities at our next meeting, maybe with breakout rooms or something like that. And we want to be a resource for voice information, a resource that you'll find through our social media pages, like interesting articles or news and notes and upcoming conferences and workshops. There isn't a central repository for a lot of upcoming conferences and workshops. And so we're hoping to be able to put those out there for you all. So if you follow our Facebook page and our Instagram, you should be up to date on many voice conferences and voice events coming up. So who are our volunteer leaders? Well, I am joined by Mary Sandage from Auburn University, Janice Sullivan-Stoll from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and Elizabeth Benson, also from Auburn University, to help lead the organization, our association this year, and get us all set and grounded for a sustainable association moving forward. So huge thanks to them. Now, one of the things that we want to do, and we're going to give everybody an opportunity if they want to be involved, is to start our meetings with a group activity. Today, we are lucky enough to have Mary Sandage lead us in a mindfulness meditation. So Mary, I am going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. And pass the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Edie. Just very quickly, I've been teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction for almost 20 years and weave it into my clinical work and also teaching in class. It's been a very stressful year for all of us for lots of reasons. So let's just do a relatively short practice to drop into the present moment. So I would invite all of you, if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes and drop into your breath. So when I cue folks to drop into their breath, what I'm asking you to do is to use all of your present moment attention to just follow your in-breath and your out-breath, almost as if you've been asked to become an expert on what moves when you inhale and what moves when you exhale. So you're welcome to breathe in through your nose or through your mouth. So I want you to notice the temperature of the air as it comes in through your nose or comes in through your mouth. And notice how the temperature of the air changes as it makes its way from the room you're in, down through your larynx and into your lungs. Notice what moves when you inhale. Do your shoulders move? Does your chest move? Does your belly move? Do your rib cage move? Do you feel yourself breathing against the back of the chair, perhaps? And however you're breathing in and breathing out in this moment is perfect. It doesn't need to change, okay? Some of you may be feeling like you have to make yourself breathe. I just want you to let your body breathe on its own, and I want you to follow it. So when you need an inhale, you inhale. When you need an exhale, you exhale. And in that little space between exhaling and when you need to inhale again, I want you to just see if you can hold that moment in your awareness. Notice if your breath feels shallow or deep, rough or smooth. Does it feel fast or slow? However you're breathing in this moment is just perfect for this moment. So breathing in and breathing out. If your mind wanders and you're thinking, oh, this is the best thing ever, just notice that thought and let it go. If you're thinking, this is really silly, notice the thought and let it go. And see if you can just, with great intention, notice any chatter and just let the chatter go and come back to your awareness of your breathing. And you don't have to do it perfectly. If your mind wanders, that's fine, no big deal. Just bring it back to your breath. And for the next minute, I want you to observe your breath with as much intention as possible. We'll start the minute now, and then I'll talk you out of the minute here when we're done. And I'd like to just end this practice with a loving kindness. So if you can hold this intention for yourself, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be free from suffering. May I feel peace and balance and forgiveness. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be free from suffering. May I feel peace and balance, connectedness with everyone in the call today, in the meeting today. May I be happy. Okay, a big breath in, big breath out. And Edie, did you want me to introduce Jenny now? Okay. Jenny Muckala is a world-renowned specialist in singing voice rehabilitation and occupational voice health. I think she also dabbles in head and neck cancer care and cleft palate care. But for those of us who are singing teachers and speech language pathologists and folks who are interested in keeping people performing, Jenny is an incredible regional resource for us. I've been fortunate enough to attend her commercial voice meeting a couple of times, and I always learn something when I listen to Jenny. So Jenny, welcome. We are privileged and thrilled that you're here today for our inaugural meeting.
Thank you. You are so kind, and thank you for starting this conversation. That's how I view this, a conversation. This is my lens that I'm considering this question through, and I'm sharing it with this group of people for consideration and conversation because this is my lens. And this is what I think I know at this point. And then there's always more to know about the people that we are all passionate about serving. And most of the time we are also passionate about our voices as singers ourselves. And so I'll share my thought, my content. There we go. And okay. Is my presenter view viewable as well? Oh, well, that sort of is distracting, isn't it? So let me pull out and we'll just look at the slide because my point is I want to keep it simple. So my thought here is that to some degree, the question of returning to performance after COVID, and now I can't see you all. Oh, goodness gracious.
Jenny, do you want to reshare your screen?
Let me say that. Let me do that again. Here we go. Here we go.
Beautiful.
Thank you for the help.
All good.
So there is a little bit of this question mark of when we're returning to performance after COVID-19, and the title even feels too big because some of the artists that I have encountered and am working with are de facto recovering from COVID, and there's some very specific challenges they're facing. And then even those who have not contracted and experienced COVID and recovered, but they've been sheltering at home. and they have been off the road, and they have been separated from their income, their tour family, their livelihood, and their voices. There's some pretty dramatic and traumatic challenges implicit in that for so many people. And so I don't think that I necessarily have to sort of constitute sort of from whence I come. I have been in Nashville for 19 years. It's been my home professionally and my home personally for that length of time. And the majority of the folks that I work with are commercial voice users, whether they are unsigned or signed artists. For various reasons, they come into my office to see my colleagues, my laryngology colleagues and my speech pathology colleagues with some sort of vocal deficit. And they're all ages, all genres, and all levels of training. But where I live regional does impact kind of the broad group of folks that I see from day to day. And so the intention that I think most of my speech pathology colleagues share with me in rehabilitating the voice is we intend to help these individuals recover their voices. And I share this with my singing voice colleagues as well. So this is not just my little end of the pond, but we want our artists to reaccess their voices and recover them in a way that maximizes their potential without jeopardizing their anatomy and physiology. We want to strengthen the voice for its particular purpose and then to enjoy it. This is why we do it, because there's something that I've heard a couple of my artists say before. There's nothing else I was made to do. And so the isolation at home has been particularly acutely challenging for so many of them. And for that reason, rehabilitation is multidisciplinary in nature because it's not just here. It's here, it's here. The rehabilitation really is hitting all three areas. So what I've started with a lot of my folks is saying, okay, well, why don't we start with where you have been physically? Where have you been physically for the last 11 and counting months? And this really varies by region, doesn't it? So where you are regionally in the United States significantly impacts your ability to even stand up and go outside and be physical. And I think that all of the other question marks there are kind of implicit in our ability to even be mobile, to be community, to be connected to each other. And so what would the next right thing be if we have been sedentary or stuck for 11 months? We were trying and get back to this connectedness of normal vocal rigor of use with little to no trauma to the vocal folds. That's the goal of all habilitation and rehabilitation once we get you back there. But if we consider, this is what I sort of sit with my folks with and say, okay, if we consider the formidable, in some ways, challenge of getting you back to a 90-minute show with a touring band in a large venue where your competing noise may be at 110 dB, and you have variable levels of technology you're using. You have anywhere from 4 to 7 other players on stage with you. You're mobile, and you have been still. We have there's a sort of an overwhelming task there. And so, okay, why don't we start with the idea of the first pillar is, how do we get back to being energetic? And the work includes, let's be specific about what you need to do and how you're going to do it. How will you get consistent about, how will you be consistent about that work, which returns you to 90-minute shows, 4 to 5 days a week, mobile all the time. And then in all of that, find the fun, which seems almost like an insensitive statement, but I'll elaborate on what I mean there, because if you have been stuck and traumatized, it can be a little bit insensitive to hear someone say, and then let's find the fun. So when I say be energetic, part of what Mary so beautifully started with is that how do we get back in our bodies? Because there's a certain amount of body betrayal in the I can't do the thing I have always been able to do. And I hold myself up against that recording in my mind of this is how I do it, this is how it's always sounded, and I can't do it. And so if I've been sedentary for an extended period of time, and I've talked with my physical therapist friends and colleagues about this, if I can't go outside, the first thing I ought to do is probably stand up. Start moving your body. I know, and I don't mean to be glib in saying that, right? But stand up, because sitting, and people are doing the Zoom shows, sitting in a quiet room that's really dry. There's no give back. So I'm over singing in a quiet room that's really dry, and I'm trying to generate the energy on this side. And so being energetic is me leaning in and coming close and over singing. And if I check my posture when Mary had us do that, if I turn to my side, here. That extended position where I'm adding a lot of energy is a lot of static body. So I ask my folks to stand up, and you can join me or you can sit where you are and put your arms on your head. Because some of this is, I am going to intentionally shorten all of your shoulder girdle and your neck muscles. So this is not I'm borrowing from another brain I trust, but I'm going to shorten all these muscles, rest my wrists here. And in this position, since tidal volume is something I haven't used in a long time, in this position, take a breath in, because some of us don't remember what a big breath is. And if I take the breath here, and pull through your nose so it's a narrower aperture, you feel a little bit more of that flow. And what do you feel move? Observe it, let it go, and do it again. Here, I can't raise my shoulders, even if I'm used to breathing up here. What is most mobile? My false and floating ribs. So where I breathe there, I have that immediate activation of that lower space. And I take that off my cognitive load of, am I breathing big enough? Am I accessing enough? I'm accessing more. And I want to pair this position, which is not tiring. This is probably going to be tiring, but if I can posture here, given that somebody hopefully doesn't have some limitation of movement, I can get into that lower breath. I can have them breathe and expand. And then on the exhale, which I don't have to force out, because that forcing out, that I'm ready to go, here I go, that activation, that bringing your initiation of voice to a lower phonation threshold pressure, or even finding that minimum amount of air necessary to initiate voice and to ride the breath and to take advantage of how your lungs, when they expand like that, will recoil and you can phonate with it. That feeling can be so welcome and feel so good that it feels novel again. But however you vocalize with it, you initiate with, let's expand your breathing space. Let's use how the ribs expand in 3 dimensions and want to snap back if I allow them to. And I start to voice with the idea of allowing. Whether I'm allowing the lungs to I try and avoid the abdominal, chest, clavicular breathing idea because it's all too much in a cognitive load in the beginning. We can name it later, but now access the feeling and follow the feeling of flow and release. So however we voice, I want to start with the voice I use most, my speaking voice, and the voice that feels most familiar, and then I'm going to expand from there. But that feeling of expand, hold, and that observing, and then allow. And there's a window of observation before you even use your abdomen to engage in voicing. And that observing the movement before you engage and then before you have to help get to the end of the breath. It's not about how long you can hold the tone for. It's not about if you've still got it, although a lot of people feel this urgency to kind of get back. And the gentleness of getting into the voice before you start to overload yourself is something I really feel passionate about encouraging people in, because you can learn to bear more weight again. But it takes some time to appropriately bear the weight. If I go back to the gym today and expect to be able to do 10 to 15, 20 minutes on the Stairmaster at this speed that I was before when I was last there, which was a long time ago, I will challenge my body too much and risk inefficiency, injury. It is a very tight loop to injury from overdoing it too soon. And so the familiarity of the feel comes, but it's that gentle allowing. It's the first place I want to get people in. And I have one small thing I'm going to put set the table with that I'm curious about the response and thoughts of this group, and we can discuss at the end. I have some caution here because I have a lot of people coming in saying, I have this thing that I can blow into and it gets my lungs stronger. And the EMST, and I have nothing against the EMST, and I have caution about it in this stage of voice recovery for my artists. I don't necessarily think it serves them best because you enter into the forced expiratory and the conscious expiration from the beginning of the breath. And I don't map that well onto singing with ease and flow. You don't find your phonation threshold pressure, which you can have dexterity of where you go with that. It's not a good one-to-one. So I caution my folks that there hasn't been a lot of robust confirmation that that's going to serve them well, and let's wait. Now, there is a role for folks who have had COVID, who do have a diminished respiratory space, and there is a role there. But how we get to voicing with it is a little bit of a farther jump, in my opinion. There are different size breaths for the different things you need to do. And so what I try and encourage my folks with is, if you're used to having a maximum phonation time of 19 seconds, and I can just hold this note until glory comes, and now I only have 8 seconds, and I am stuck in the terror of that. If we find a better efficiency of air flow, air pressure to your vocal fold resistance, we will get further with what breath you have. And as you work on expanding your pulmonary function, that's part of your recovery, and that's outside of my dance space, but we have medical professionals that will target and work on that with you, then we will see those things move together. But our job is this pressure resistance efficiency, to not overwork the system too soon. And so I just jumped ahead and talked. Here, there's one little slide here that I love, and I love using this visual for the idea of how when you're taking that breath and that at-rest breathing, that's beautiful. You can see the diaphragm descend, you can see the goody bits that are in your viscera descend with that fuller breath, and you can see how the rib cage beautifully expands. And that visual is just so helpful, because if my arms are resting and I can rest and allow my body to expand like a balloon and deflate, that really can be helpful for a lot of people. And you can pair it with voiced continuance, zzz, zzz, so that we don't breathe in isolation. We want to get to voicing as immediately as we can, because that's the pairing that matters to us. I think with this posture, we also start to notice where we're not necessarily in alignment also, without over lifting our rib cage and over finding right posture. there's a little bit more of that rest and postural alignment. And as I breathe and as I find the space, I can rest on my spine and breathe from that place of rest rather than the forwardness. Ooh, I almost fell. Or the posture I have found myself in for so many months. When I say be specific, what I intend here is that I come from a classical background, just being transparent. I was very fortunate to study voice from a young age, and it was always through a classical lens. And through a classical lens, there is a correct way to sing. Now, what I mean by that, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek because that was sort of the lens through which I looked at all voice in my young years. You sing your Fach, you have this repertoire that you sing, this is your range, this is your tessitura, here's my dance space. And that's not necessarily true with commercial voice users. And as my appreciation of the anatomy and physiology of voice has expanded, there are ways to be efficient with our instrument outside of the categorization. And so when somebody says, I can't do the thing that I have always done, and the song that made me my living, I am tied to it in perpetuity. And I can do it now. But I don't know if I can do it at 30. I don't know if I can do it at 40. I don't know if I can do it at 50. You're tied to that range, that high note, that low note, for this volume in perpetuity. And so that will set the standard of practice in voice recovery as well. So that the individualization of the work we do will be set with, okay, give me your set list. What have you written? So a lot of people have written an album and they're going into studio right now. So they wrote it in 2020. They're going into studio now, and that's a great use of time. And then they're going to release it summer and tour it August, September. It's actually a brilliant use of their time. And they've been sedentary and sitting and they're struggling and they're coming in flat. And so what's your highest note? What's your lowest note? What's your loudest volume? What's your quietest volume? How long is your set? How many shows each week? What register do you expect to sing in? And I don't necessarily use that language with my highest volume of individuals because most of them have never done any sort of voice training. And so they will, they'll look at me funny if I say what register, and they'll say, my voice. Okay, well, let me hear a little. I can't do it right now. So we'll play the recording. It's something really helpful. And I don't know how many folks have any artists in this situation right now. It's really helpful if they are comfortable to share their scratch vocals with you. Because a lot of them were writing demos during this past year and they're doing demos over Zoom and their demos are relatively untouched. And those demos are it's a little bit more of this is sort of the raw voice. It hasn't gone through any of the incredible, cool technological tools that are available to our folks. And there is a sort of, and this is the cool psycholinguistic and psychoacoustic stuff in music. It packs what I think I can do if I'm listening to the radio version of the song. That's what I think I have to replicate. But the song has been compressed and compressed and compressed and processed, not necessarily sounding unlike them, but it sets their standard of what they think need to sound like. So we're going to use their range, their volume, their register. If they sing only with thyrorytenoid engagement, hey, they're always here. Then I know that while it might be valuable to help them access the voice in that slightly longer position, my bicep is my thyrorytenoid and my wrist is my cricothyroid, just because I'm physical. So if I need to access a note that's not there, and they have that block about how am I going to get at that, this is where the tools that we are comfortable with, semi-occluded vocal tract, resonant voice work. This is where Zoom has been a particular gift because I don't have to worry about the splatter. with water, but I really, really find water to be a valuable, robust feedback tool on consistency of airflow. I've really learned so much listening to a particular set, and I've put their names at the end of this talk, of artists who do a lot of run work. That's my 2021 goal. Everybody needs one. Just working on runs and working on vocal agility. And they know implicitly the importance of flow and the feel of it, but they don't necessarily have a very concrete way to feel it. So if the note doesn't exist because I can't find it anymore, does it exist? Centimeter of water. Can I locate it? Can I turn the car engine on and let it run there? And help this find phonation threshold pressure. I know I hammer that one, but I just had a great conversation with my clinical fellow about the importance of it recently as a referent for I am not working harder than I need to do this ease of sound, clarity of sound, dexterity of sound. And if I can't do it with a fence that's a little bit of resistance, but it exceeds atmospheric pressure, so I get a little more back and I can repeat it because I know I'm right because the bubbles are there, it gives me a confidence in my competence to repeat this when the tool is not there. So whatever your tool to get in is, I love this one because if you buy those little baby bottles that are not so helpful for the adults, but great in kids' lunches, the 8-ounce bottles of water, drain it down to below the sticker, throw this in, and then when they are driving around to pick up their groceries that are going to get put in the back and pick up this, they're driving around. It's a smaller jump than some of the voiced continuants that are my favorite, but they can be such a barrier to some people. Like if I were to, that is so intimidating for some folks, but they can do it and your voice is there. Let's start here. So if there's a run that's really intimidating for someone, if they're, and I'm trying to watch my time, Edie, if there's a run that's really intimidating for someone, and I'm tempted to try it, that they just don't feel like it's in there or in them, then if I do a I'm feeling the distance between the two notes. I'm in my middle register, sure, but the run is going to be something in my mixed register. So I'm going to enter into that space with the place, the feel, and then something that I know I'm doing it right, so that's off my brain. So I'm trying to affirm like, it's there, it's there, it's there, I'll try it. It's there, it's there, it's there, I'll try it. And that kind of practice not only makes us braver, but that's part of motor learning. And we, if my brain is always on, I'm not going to be present to who I'm singing to. And nobody wants to hear a brain sing. And that is not my wisdom. That is the wisdom of one of my, my smart younger friends who was working on this kind of dexterity. And then at a certain point had to say, I got to turn it off. Nobody wants to hear my brain singing. Helpful, but she had the location, the feel from these tools that was helpful. So you can pull out a segment of your song, slow the series down. All the series is a series of intervals. If you can do it slow, you can do it faster. Lower the key. Don't test yourself. Because if you test yourself, you tax yourself. And you walk the melody out. If they're in front of me and we're masked, I'm going to use something that's more resonance. But that's hopefully if I have somebody unloaded. And that's because in Nashville, I am seeing people in person and I can, and we have all the things. And If I need an external tool, we are Zooming because I need you to be able to splash and be energetic and not hold back. And in those instances, how many folks, raise a hand, are using a Bluetooth speaker when you work with your folks over Zoom? For you, not them. Get a Bluetooth speaker and turn it on. You will hear things you are not hearing, and it is profoundly changed the feedback I am inclined to give or not to give. It makes a profound difference. But if you do dedicate small, consistent moments to reset through the day, and you can hear yourself well, and you keep it simple, you build success, and you can start to expand what you do. I think the practice of consistency is really, it can speak for itself. And borrowing a phrase from another friend, practice makes permanent. We're trying through this explicit practice with a tool of various levels of silly or not to need the tools less, but find, there it is. There's that note that wasn't there. There it is. There it is again. Okay, let's A and B it with the tool and without the tool. Okay, let's go back to where is your breath coming from? Because I just got all up here. Okay, put your hands on your head and do the same thing. Runs are the devil for me, but it's good for me to practice that with a fence so I can feel it forward. I got a lot more of my acoustic signal forward, and I had more of the breath under me because I knew my ribs would have more room to expand even though I'm sitting. If I stood up, and I'm going to, you get more even than that. So arms up, side view is better. So and it depends what part of that series bothers you more, but I don't have to think about, is there enough breath? I can feel the deflation because I gave myself a little bit more room for it. I'm not as inclined to raise up here. And those who have, return it to COVID, Jenny, those who have recovered from COVID and have been struggling for breath and are short of breath, where are they going to be pulling from? They're going to be using their straps in the front. They're going to use their SCMs. They're going to use their traps. They are even at rest. And it is really challenging. This is a deep thing that it is a body trauma thing that is in there. So if I can position you for success and you can have, and people have cried that there it is. There it is. And if I'm here, I can't. This is rest position for athletes after a really hard run because I can get more breath under it. So there's watch it, see it, do it, and repeat it. You need less air to voice when there's water in the way. I have something that I'm focusing on rather than how pretty it sounded or didn't. That has been very potent for a lot of people that I've done this with. But I tell them 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes, 5 times a day. This is the secret to deep learning, that you repeat it for 5 minutes, and I'll give you a 5-minute hierarchy to do. And we're going to do a 5 minutes melodic series in this way. And then you're going to set it down and then go do something to get your heart rate up a little. Don't go do some burpees. Don't go do stairs. But even if you were to do a mindfulness practice, as Mary led us in, to get you more in your body, you will feel the permission almost to breathe into space you have, even if you're dealing with a depleted system. Which leads me to find the fun. I do not mean it insensitively, because there is this really helpful study that I encountered as I was thinking about this, that the last go around we had with SARS, there was a interesting retrospective study conducted with those who had recovered. So they had those who never had it, those who recovered, and 64% of those who recovered were struggling with mental health, significant mental health issues. They were depressed, they were anxious, they had a lot of post-traumatic stress. And there individuals who were sick. We didn't have a society who has been deployed to home for a far more extended period of time. So who knows what we're going to find out, but I think that this points to that reasonably there's a lot of this that's involved. And the voice is the seat of emotion. And so when you return to using the voice, which you cannot separate from yourself, from your personhood, a lot of folks, there's a lot that can come up. And it's really important in that multidisciplinary view to consider that there are other resources that we all might need to avail ourselves of. I'm very fortunate to live in a city where there is a counseling organization called Porter's Call that is only for artists, sign artists, nonprofit. They pay $5 for their sessions because it's sponsored, supported by the labels in town, because that's how important they know mental health is for artists. There's another organization called Onsite here in town, and it's a more in-depth counseling center. It's quite expensive, but they have some sponsorships, and that website I set out on the left there, the TWLOHA, that's a resource from Onsite that says if you need to find a mental health specialist support in your area, here's a resource. And I checked it, and there's really good resources in every region of the United States. And then another resource that I really like is this Headspace app, but there are a myriad of these, but a practice of getting you back in your body and third-party observation is really helpful so you can find the permission to have the fun again. Because if you keep doing the exercises to that there it is, 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 that there it is experience of, okay, my break isn't going to take me down. Okay, there's my run. Okay, there's my line. Okay, there's that song. Eventually, you might give yourself permission to have the fun with it and play with it. I love this Miles Davis quote. Because, something we know from live performances is that there are no two performances the same ever. And that's the beauty of live performance. The repeatable, I can play it on Spotify 80 times. That's always the same. But every performance, Adele doesn't sound like Adele this night and the next night. Sam Smith doesn't sound like Sam Smith this night and the next night. Every performance is different. And what they do, the nuances are what make it interesting and fun and exciting and engaging. The riff I was playing with the straw bubble and it's from Officially Julian. He has this wonderful run challenge. And runs are so intimidating for so many people. Hands up. It's not about how fast or fun or accurate it is. Stepping outside of, I'm going to get it wrong, which is not the point of runs. It's about vocal agility. And isn't that what trills are all about? Those were the bane of my experience in my younger version of myself, but I would do them and do them and do them. Why am I intimidated by runs? So these 4 individuals, among many, have these really fun, simpler or more challenging run practices that you can just do for yourself and play with up and play with the down and do it in a straw and do it with a and do it with to play with vocal agility, to play with the flow of the movement of the air outside of the context of the song in the way you've always done it. This is the way I've always done it. And there's something that's important in placing myself outside of my comfort zone of or the punishment of the song, this is the way I've always done it, and now I can't do it, and now everything's wrong. And if I can try something else on and feel the freedom of my voice and the movement of my voice, I might go try this again. Instead of I can't, I'll try. And so I just, January 19th was the one that officially Julian, each and every day, dang it, that makes me bananas. And I'm not a run specialist, but I will play with that to help myself, A, be uncomfortable in front of people I don't know and know. B, say, you know what, I'm going to try it anyway. And D, I have to feel that part of my voice, which is as viable on very little air. It didn't pop, it didn't squeak, I came right in on tone. Why am I so critical? There's a little bit of that in there too. So as we come alongside folks who are so demoralized, so anxious, so down, and so fearful because they don't know if they're going to get hired again. They don't know if their tour is going back up, and if their tour is going back up, if they're going to be rehired. Because there are people better than them that are now available and they'll work for less money. It's a big thing. And there's room for everyone. There's room for everyone. And what we have control over is what can we try today? So I submit this idea to all of you. If they're intimidated by runs, I'll pull their melodic series out again, and we'll play with that way outside their dance space and pull it back into their dance space. But the interconnectedness of these 4 pillars doesn't mean you start with be energetic, go to be specific, go to be consistent, and go to find the fun. It's that as I'm consistent, I find myself letting down, and it's fun, which means I have a little bit more energy to give, which means I might actually think I could try that one song I never had, or I could try that one note. And so there's a really tight circle that it's a reinforcing tight circle as the individuals you're there to try this what if with. It's what if we? That's the big thing. You're here. What if we? And if this tool doesn't work, what if we try this one? But the bigness of 90 minutes of a tour versus the smallness of what if we played with this part of your range? What if we found it to be comfortable? What if we found it to be repeatable? And what if you went home for a week and did it 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 until you might come back anxious and fearful again, but then you'll reflect and think, oh, but I've got that now. This is sort of like cosmically true in all ways, but I'm going to print this and put this on my wall because thanks to Edie and the Alabama Voice Foundation, I found this quote that should have been my mantra all along, because it does take a long time to sound like yourself. Wherever you're at in your voice journey, and the all it takes is your willingness to try. And if you try and try and try and try and try, and you keep hitting a wall, that's why we also have such excellent available partners in the medical field, in our laryngology colleagues, in our pulmonology colleagues, in our cardiology colleagues, in our physical therapy colleagues, and our occupational colleagues. And there are a myriad more. But we are not alone on this journey, and neither are they. And I thank you all for your time. I am sure I went massively over time. But I do appreciate your attention, and I am happy to answer any questions for those who would like to stay.
Jenny, show us, this quote is fantastic, but do you want to unshare your screen? And Mary, were there questions? Oh yeah, Elizabeth had one.
Here we go. Hi. All right, Elizabeth, I'm reading, you found Bluetooth headphones, AirPods have a slight delay, which is why wired headphones are preferred for remote teaching. So I'm so glad you brought that up because I have a voiceover artist using their AirPods, and it has been problematic because she did not realize till her husband said to her, "Honey, did you realize you were shouting? I'm working right here. You're shouting at the screen." Because she wasn't necessarily getting her audio back with the AirPods. And so what I mean is a Bluetooth speaker to my output jack, or to Bluetooth to my sound for my computer. I have I have an Ethernet. I have an Ethernet in my office, and that just, I don't have timing delays, and so that may be part of. I'll have to think on an answer for you, and I have some audio engineer family people that I might seek some better options for you, but I have Ethernet and I do an external, so I'm not only getting feedback like a wedge, but also avoiding the over talking, which was not your question, but that brought that to mind. Is that on any level helpful?
Yes, thank you.
What are some of the singing voice difficulties I'm encountering? Oh, okay, Mary. This is from Mary. So, singing voice difficulties I'm encountering with post-COVID clients. I have 5 women, and they're all the same body type, who are doing inverse breathing. They're literally breathing, and they are eeny, teeny, weeny. They are BMI of 0. They are little petite women, performers, heavy tourers. They are compact. Their entire abdominal musculature is just a rock, so they aren't even soft there. They're working with my physical therapist and trying to like get up under their rib cage to like help them even expand there. So this inverse breathing that they're doing, I actually have started conversations with some pelvic floor specialists.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 contacts in town that I have calls out to have a conversation about. There is a connection here. Another woman who I'm not sure if she made it onto the call, but I have a friend and colleague who, a couple of them have recently had children. Mm-hmm. And those that have recently had children are having this same trouble with breathing, and it's related to pelvic floor, and they're starting to inverse breathe. Mm-hmm. So they breathe up and clavicularly and even into their back. Like they're not breathing, they can't descend their diaphragm, it's just hard, they can't locate it. Even breathing up here, they are still able to raise up the rib cage. They're in the front or in the back. And so partnering with these other body specialists, because there is some larger global coordination and opening up that is, I have something to learn there. We're working with smaller breath size and that pairing of smaller breath size. So whatever breath you have, we're going to work with it. So those are the individuals I will actually use, and thank you, Zoom, gargle more. Because if I have an ounce of water, and I'll show you, I don't need a lot of air pressure so long as that coordination of that is something that's very well cemented. So for those who have not seen this before, the first 20 of these, I tell folks, all you're focusing on is using your air because your body doesn't trust that you're not going to choke. And the mechanics of it are, if I have an ounce of water, I maintain spinal alignment. So I'm not necessarily singing to orchestra, first tier or second. I'm not singing to orchestra. I'm not coming to a mic. I'm staying in spinal alignment on the atlas axis. So I can tilt my head up to second tier. So the water will go back, drop the jaw. So it's not a part of this. And the water gives me information about continuity of air pressure and airflow and base of tongue, because they're going to use the base of tongue to try and piston the sound to get it bigger. So I've said all that, and now I'm going to You can go for a long line, or you can try and find that phonation threshold pressure without this. If I use this, I'm going to choke. If I use this, I'm going to choke, because the bigger muscles will overcome that space. I mean, we only have a dime's worth of a diameter of space to work with without any of the compression of your constrictors. So it's a real novel way of helping people get body insight into what are you using to try and bring the voice forward, because they're using their whole body, and they're little women with big voices, big voices. And one of them just had PFTs done, and I've asked her to send this to me, so this is just by her report, that she's down to 60% of her lung capacity. And she's walking, talking, hiking mountains, and she's been recording and putting music out and doing small shows. And she's exhausted. That's a very long-winded answer, but that's the big number. And I have a singer coming in on Tuesday who's like, don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know. I can't sing anymore. I can't breathe anymore. And she's of the same body type. So I wonder if that will be the same story.
And were any of them intubated, Jenny?
None.
None.
None of them were hospitalized. They are all between the ages of 27 and I think the oldest is like 38. Single women, mothers of young and older, and all of them lost taste and smell. All of them had complaints of that sort of like struggle to breathe towards the end of recovery. Like it was when they started getting more mobile again, they started noticing the trouble. It's a good question. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about as more of these stories are coming out, and more of our folks are getting it back to, why can't I do the thing?
Yeah. Thank you.
We've seen a lot of primary MTD and post-COVID patients who weren't intubated. I agree, Edie. We have 2 literally near aphonia with tremendous fear surrounding all of this. Yes. We have had a tremendous amount of hemorrhages.
Really?
Yes. And I don't know what to attribute that to, but hemorrhagic lesion and de facto hemorrhages. But one, they have been male. But that died, I can't talk, that's fearful. And those are the folks that a gentle cut bubble, at least, even a straw bubble, they go, and that's gentle bubbles. Get down in the bathtub and blow on the surface of the water in the bathtub. See what you find there. Make sure somebody's nearby, don't fall asleep. But get yourself relaxed, get yourself into a position where you might actually allow yourself to rest. And then at water level, I'm going to have you blow bubbles at water level and see what you find. That was the only way in for one of mine, because they were just holding their breath so much. So I have seen that as well, Edie. What are my thoughts on PVFM and young women you were just referencing? A physician recently suggested this to our group of SLPs, and so I might clarify, Catherine, your question. So the cohort of young women with the inverse breathing that I was mentioning, that's what you were referring to, and potentially there's some PVFM in there?
Yes, that group of women.
So the group of women that I was speaking of, the flags for PVFM were not there. So there was no audible inspiratory struggle or stridor. of any level. They didn't necessarily have a complaint of constriction here. It was the amount that they were able to inflate their lungs to actually get to what vital capacity was for them was diminished. And so some of that diminished capacity I can't assess, and they go to the pulmonologist and get a PFT.
Mhm.
Some of them, it is that body tightness and hold and bracing, and even the idea of barrel breathing where their lungs might move dynamically is really foreign to them. And sometimes putting these young ladies on the floor prone, so on their stomachs, head to the side, arms to the side, neutral. And sometimes I had to get up under their shoulders and just sort of help them sort of spread, because they were even hooding, that's a retinoids, but guarding on the floor, and just help them spread. And that is, if they're able to lay on their stomach, some folks have some physical limitations there. But what was interesting in that position for two of them is that in that position, prone, they were released and relaxed on the floor, and they did not as readily lift. They actually released their bodies to the floor, and they had some sense of abdominal movement there because they let gravity take them. And there was a lot of breathing and isolation there just to see if they could. It's not quite a savasana, right? You're on your back, it's on your belly, and not quite child position, though I tried that also, where your belly is on your thighs and your head and your arms are relaxed, because in some ways that's a safer position and people might allow themselves to breathe a little bit more expansively there. And I know you asked me about PVFM. I am not quite convinced that would be the case for these ladies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jenny, first of all, thank you so much. That was amazing. Your ability to engage us and even get all of us practicing and doing is just stellar. And there couldn't have been a better person to educate us for our first meeting. So thank you so much. You're incredible. And you can come and be part of our. Tennessee's really close to Alabama. That's what you and I promised each other when I moved here. So you can be part of our group anytime. Thank you, Jenny.
With pleasure. Thank you, everyone. It was such a pleasure to speak with you and see your faces.
Absolutely. Before everybody hangs up and enjoys their evening, Elizabeth, you wanted to talk about a few things, right?
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth. I'm the chapter secretary for the moment. Thank you for being here today. I would have interacted with all of you probably via email prior to the meeting, so thank you. And thank you for your patience as we checked everyone in. We'll have a more streamlined system in place for our next meeting, but I'm very excited to share with you our next meeting date, which is April 18th in honor of World Voice Day. And before we decide who is going to come, we would like to get some information from all of you as to what your preferences might be. What types of topics are you interested in engaging in? And if you have suggestions, or if you know folks and have professional connections you can help us make. So what we've done is create a survey. And I'll type it into the chat here, but I will also be sending this out to all the folks who RSVP'd for this meeting in an email. But here's a survey here for us to talk with you, get information from you. It is defaulted to be anonymous, so you're welcome to select from categories that we've already sort of listed for you, or name your own topics. Give us suggestions of speakers, and if you would like to leave your name to help us make professional connections, then there's a space for you to do that as well. We're also interested in getting some information on days of the week that work well for meetings for you. They do not always have to be on Sundays. And so there's a little bit of scheduling survey questions there for you as well. So thank you again for corresponding. You're always welcome to reach us at alabamavoicefoundation@gmail.com. And I look forward to seeing you all at future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy and have a great night. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.